And in this tutorial, we're going to be discussing procedures, which are the subroutines in the code, functions, parameters, and also variable scope. So it's quite a bit. So let's get started. So what if you would like to be able to control when a piece of code executes? Well, what you can do is put it within either a function or a subroutine. So let's start with subroutines first. So in order to create a new subroutine, as you can see here, we've already seen them before. Private sub, the btn add.click. So that's an event handler for this. As you can see right there, it's an event handler. Let's create our own. So start off with either the public or the private keywords, and the difference is whether or not that subroutine can be seen from other classes. In this example, it doesn't really matter because we only have one class, which is this form. But regardless, unless you know you need to access it from other classes, try to keep it private. Followed by sub, and what should we call it? Math, with empty parameters. We'll learn about them later. And well, I guess we just click enter, and there we have it, our own little subroutine. So what should we have happen in there? Let's just create some variables. Dim a is as double is equal to 4. Dim b as double is equal to 12. And let's create another variable. Dim total as double is equal to a plus b. And what should we have happen? A message box. Dot show. And then inside that, we should probably throw in total dot toString. And there we should put down, I don't know, addition, because that's what we did. Then after that, message box dot OK, followed by information. So let's see if we can access this little sub that we created here when we click our add button. All you have to do is type in the name of the subroutine, followed by the parentheses. That's it. Just like that. Just math, empty parameters. That is it. So let's run this and click add. 16. 4 plus 12 is 16, so it did it for us. Now I'd like to discuss variable scope. So as you can see, we declared some variables in here. Because this is private, do you think we could access them from elsewhere perhaps? Let's try to find out. Let's throw out message box dot show, and before we do anything, let's create a variable here. Dim x is equal to a plus b. Whoops, I don't know what's happened there. Oh, you know what? I can actually show you right here, because thanks to Visual Studio. As you can see, they're underlined, and it says that b is not declared. But it is declared, but it's in a different subroutine. So when you create variables, because I have not done this before, I've always made my variables up here. If you declare them within a subroutine or a function, they are known what's called at the procedure level. It has procedural scope. So in here, I'll put down procedure scope, otherwise known as a local variable. When people are talking about these, they're usually talking about local variables. If you create a variable up here, declare one up here, that one is known as having module scope, even though this is not a module. But basically, that means a class level variable. So it can be seen, so if you create any variables in here, it can be seen through all subroutines that you create within this class. Now there's one more. If you go outside of the class, you can create a variable that has what's called namespace scope, which is otherwise known as a global variable. Now, if you have multiple forms, multiple classes, modules, functions, it can be seen everywhere. just everywhere. That's why it's called a global variable. So that's pretty much your different scopes here. So the ones that can only be seen in here, the ones that can be seen throughout this entire class, then the ones that can be seen throughout the entire application, just everywhere. Okay, so all this did not work, so I can get rid of this. So what about a function? And don't worry, I will do parameters later. But what about a function? How do you go about a function? And what's the difference? Well, the difference is a function actually returns a value so that you can actually assign it to a variable. So what I can do is create a variable here called total, set that equal to, let's say, a double. And I want to get rid of this one right here. And I want to get rid of the message box right here. And so I have, okay, dim total right there. So let's create this a function now. So I'll get rid of sub and type in function. And then afterwards, you have to specify a data type since you're going to be returning a number. So I'm going to be returning it as a double. And then what you can do is type in return, and let's go a plus b. And it's always best to put parentheses around these just in case. Nothing wrong with that. So it's going to go into this function here, and then it's going to return whatever a plus b is as a double, if that makes sense. So up here, we can get rid of this guy now. And so we have total up here now that we declared, and we can say total is equal to, and then you throw in the name of your function, just like that. So if you click, so then, do I have a label? Yes, I do. So I'll throw in label output dot text is equal to total dot to string. So I'll click save, and then if I click add, it still does it. There's your 16, and that's a function. It actually returns the value. Now parameters are the next thing I'm going to be going into with these functions. And you can use them with subroutines as well, but I don't really like using subroutines as much as I do functions, because I'm used to functions more. That's probably why. But what if you want to be able to control the numbers that go in here? Well, in the function, you could always create what I'm about to, but let's do it outside instead, just because, you know, it's a bit more creative. Okay, so let's create a couple more variables here. So I'll go dim x as double, and I'll go dim y as double. And let's create a couple of input boxes. So one would be x is equal to input box, and then inside that we'll throw in, type in a number, and what should have it say? Input required, and the default value should be 0. And we actually have to convert each of these, but see, string to double, so I actually forgot about that. Let me change that to a string, and let me change that to a string, and then dim x conv, there we go, as double, and dim y conv as double. There we go. And then what we can do is, first of all, let me copy this, copy, paste, set that to y, and then I'll throw in x conv is equal to, and then c double, and then inside that throw in x. Now I'm going to copy this, and then I'll paste it right here. So now we have two x and y. We're going to have two boxes in which we are going to be asked to put in a number, and then they'll be converted, and then we can throw in x and y as parameters. So we have x and y right here, and well, we have a little error, but we're going to be fixing that in the meantime. So basically, just put in the variables. Whoops, these are actually going to be conv. Yeah, you don't want to throw in the strings. There we go. And now let's go down to our math. We now have to create corresponding variables for the xconv and yconv. They do not need to be the same name. So let's just call them x and y. So since we're going to be dealing with values, we are going to be typing by val, x as double, and then by val y as double. So you can actually change the types if you want. That's alright. So the by val just means that we are going to be basically making copies. These are new variables that we're creating, and they can only be accessed from in here. Then we can get rid of these guys. And then return x plus y. And what will happen is it will add this x and y. So basically you type in your two numbers, they get converted from strings to doubles, then it will take them in as parameters in this function, so the xconv and yconv, and then these are the two corresponding variables. So we're saying by val because they're going to be numbers, and we have to make sure that they're doubles because, well, first of all, this total right here is a double, and we have to make sure the whole function's a double, so it's a double equal to a double, and it's going to return the x plus y. So then this function right here will equal to this xconv plus yconv, and this total will then be equal to that. So I'll click save, and then I'll run this application. When I click add, I'll have two different numbers to type in. So I'll put in 5, and I'll put in 6. Whoops, did I get those right? 5, okay, and 7. Oh, whoops, right here. Y. That's Y. I didn't change that to a Y. I'm sorry about that. It's because I copied and pasted, so I wasn't paying attention. So I'll throw in 5, okay, and 7, and now we get 12. There we go, now it worked. I'm sorry about that. And I think that was about all I really wanted to show you. Okay, so I showed you by val, but I didn't show you by ref. And I actually want to show you a difference between them. So I'm going to create two subroutines, one that passes in a variable by value, and the other one that passes one in by reference, so that you can see the difference. So first, allow me to create a variable in here called dimz as double, and I'll set it equal to 0. And then let's create our two procedures. So private and sub, and what do I want to call it? I'll call this one value, because this one will be the one that's by val, and there we go. And I'll throw in by val, and I'll call it z as double. It doesn't have to be a z again, but that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it, so we got another one, and of course we can't have two with the same name, so I'll call this one reference, and this one will be by ref. And both of them will do the same thing. I'm going to increment the numbers. So z plus equals 5. Whoops. There we go. And then down here, z plus equals 5. Okay, so as we see, if we declared z up here, then it would be able to read z down here without having to pass it. The reason why we have to pass our z variable into these subroutines or functions is because since this variable here is declared within this private subroutine as opposed to within the class, these other subroutines cannot see them. Okay, so let's see what the difference is. So let's go into these two things. So let's have a message box appear. You know what? First we have to go into it. So what was the first one called? Value. So value, and then we passed in z, right? And I'll throw a message box dot show, and we'll probably want print z to string. Remember, it has to be a string, otherwise you'll get an error. This has to be a string, not enough. You can't just put z. Followed by, let's just call it output. Followed by message box buttons dot OK, and that's good enough. So I'll copy all of this, and then I'll type in reference, and then I'll paste it again. So what we're going to see is the difference. By val actually makes a copy of the variable and does whatever math you want on it, but then you have to do something with it within that procedure, otherwise it's pointless. Reference will actually reference the variable that you're passing in and make those changes. So it'll refer to that variable make whatever changes it is, and then back here it'll apply those changes. So we'll actually see those changes in action. So I'll run this, and when I click add, 0 popped up first. If I click OK, now 5 popped up. So there you go, there's your difference. Here with the by val, the changes did not take place, while with the by ref, the changes did take place. So that's the difference between by val and by ref.